Not only won't President Obama utter the words Islamic terrorism, he now refuses to acknowledge that the victims of last month's attack at a Jewish deli in Paris were targeted for their faith.
It is entirely legitimate for the American people to be deeply concerned when you've got a bunch of violent, vicious zealots who behead people or randomly shoot a bunch of folks in a deli in Paris.
And that comment wasn't randomly made by the president. Today, the White House backed it up.
The adverb that the president chose was used to indicate that the individuals who were killed in that terrible, tragic incident were killed not because of who they were, but because of where they randomly happened to be.
They weren't killed because they were in a Jewish deli, though? They were in a kosher deli?
These individuals were not targeted by name. This is the point.
Not by name, but by religion, were they not?
Well, John, there were people other than just Jews who were in that deli.
Do you see any doubt that deli was attacked because it was a kosher deli? This was
No,
not
John.
any random deli.
No, John.
It was a kosher deli.
I answered the question once. No. Ed.
So then why didn't the president acknowledge that? If he knows that and it's obvious, why didn't he say that? He had a long...
The president has acknowledged that on many occasions when he's had the opportunity to speak about this incident.
Somebody call a doctor because I'm in pain. All four of the victims killed in the Parisian kosher supermarket were Jewish. Their funerals held in Jerusalem. But even the State Department stunningly won't acknowledge their religion.
Does the administration really believe that these people, that the victims of this attack were not singled out because they were of a particular faith?
Well, as you know, I believe, if I remember the victims specifically, there were not all victims of one background or one nationality.
Does the administration believe that this was an anti-Jewish an attack on the Jewish community in Paris?
I don't think we're going to speak on behalf of French authorities.
It just keeps getting worse at an alarming rate. Dana, get your take on these comments and the communications coming out of the White House, the State Department.
I've been nearly unable to breathe since I saw that. And I would tell you got to go back and watch the entire State Department and White House briefing, because you cannot believe that they're actually saying what they're saying. They're arguing about the president's adverbs. Then after they leave the podium, after those performances, they both go back to their desks and they tweet something that says, "We have been perfectly clear all along that it was an act of anti-Semitism." Okay, so is tweeting better than speaking? I mean, in this world now, are we just supposed to say, okay, just go to Twitter and not believe that what you said at the podium 5 minutes ago is what the president has asked you to say? The other thing that bothers me, and I don't know how this happened, so that interview that the president gave was on January 23rd. Mm-hmm. Vox then does a whole bunch of hocus-pocus editing, makes it look real slick. Look at him, he couldn't look better. Then they don't release it until February 8th or 9th. If you are a staffer for the President of the United States, you are in the room when the President gives an interview like that. And it doesn't occur to you that you might have a problem when this happens, and you don't try to fix it beforehand, and then all of a sudden they think this is a partisan attack on the president. I actually think that the president owes the Jews of Europe an apology. They deserve better from the president of the United States. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and somebody must stick up for them.
How about the Jews of the world deserve an apology? Take it a step further. Eric, your reaction to this fallout. You think they would have a chance to figure it out and fix it? Instead, semantic gymnastics.
Very important point, because that Vox interview was a couple of weeks ago, and
January
it just
23rd.
January 20th. It just came out recently. So there was a time where they could have pulled that interview down, but they chose to go with it, where President Obama literally says a bunch of folks, I won't say terrorists, killing people, a bunch of folks killed some people in a deli in Paris. Then Josh Earnest backs and fills and says, yeah, here's why it wasn't anti-Semitism, because they weren't mentioned by name. Now think about every single hate crime that's prosecuted in this country. Is that going to be the standard for hate crimes if they're mentioned by, the victim is mentioned by name before they're killed or beat up or done whatever to? So that's ridiculous. Here's my problem. Josh Earnest, up until this round, has been pretty darn good, I think. He's been respectable. This Josh Earnest right there that we just saw today reminded me of Jay Carney, and for the first time since he's taken over. What are we, about a year now into this? Josh Earnest, what's going on?
I don't know.
Josh, you had us.
Save yourself. Get a headhunter.
Yeah, now I'm
Get
done.
a job.
I'm done.
Yeah. Terrible. Greg?
Well, this is a very easy way to look at this. They are terror denialists. They deny terror at every place. So when Islamists kill Jews, they blame the butterfly effect. You know, it's like 9/11 was due to fog. This is not a White House. This is an outhouse. They're so full of crap. If an American cop, shoots someone who just committed a strong armed robbery, they indict the entire justice system. Mm-hmm. They call it a systematic condemnation of a corrupt system. But when an Islamist goes to a kosher market and kills a group of Jews, that's random. They could see root causes in everything except the truth. What are they scared of? What are they frightened of? Why won't they say what's happening? They're obsessed with language, yet they can't articulate a single truth. And I finally realized what it is. All these years that they've been talking about Islamophobia, they are truly the Islamophobic ones. They have such a profound fear. President Obama, his White House, has such a profound fear of Islam that it forbids them from identifying actual terror, attacks on Jews. They can't bring themselves to do it because they're terrified of Islam. They are the Islamophobes.
If only we could get a vaccination to prevent this widespread epidemic at the White House. Bob, what do you think about these comments, and how do you even reconcile the fact that they are not even responding or tuning in to the horrifying nature of these statements they're making?
Well, a couple of things. One, I think that Greg says it's the fear of. I have to think from Obama's standpoint, it's probably the like of. You know, in other words, I think he's. He, as I said yesterday, he grew up in this climate. But how you can stand there and say this is a Jewish kosher deli, and yes, could you not name the people that are going to be shot? But what are the chances that the people in that delicatessen are Jewish? Probably pretty high.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget also that the shooter calls a reporter, a French reporter, afterwards, and they say, "Why did you do it?" And he said, "I wanted to kill some Jews."
Right.
I mean, how much more clear do you need to be than that? That's about as transparent as you can be.
No question that it was targeted. Here's the problem, and Dana points it out, that today, Josh Earnest, these are his words, talking about the people who were killed not because of who they were, but because they were where they randomly happened to be. And then the tweet, this is Josh Earnest's tweet, his words. Our view has not changed. Terror attack at Paris Kosher Market was motivated by anti-Semitism. POTUS didn't intend to suggest otherwise.
Well, then why did you say that?
No, but are we so stupid that we're not going to hold them accountable for within hours that they completely refute the very words that they spoke to the world? Really, it's not just America; it's to the world. They're at that podium. Everyone across every state department across the globe is watching what Josh Earnest is saying.
Would you imagine if you had to go into a department store to do this? Would you have to stop and look for stars of David on everybody's neck? I mean, to figure out which. I mean, of course, you're going to go with the largest concentration of people who are Jewish happen to be. So it's from the beginning. It doesn't make much sense, and I'm going to refuse to say any more than that.
Well, let's see who else is left to offend. The Christians, they had it the other day. Now the Jews. I mean, honestly. Don't offend the Muslims, though. Let's turn now to the president's prayer breakfast swipe at Christians.
Remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ.
Well, last night, Bill O'Reilly asked Obama's former aide, David Axelrod, why he would choose to make such a remark that would rile up Christians. Axelrod's answer, the president knew exactly what he was doing.
I think he knew what he was saying, and he knew that it was provocative. Absolutely, I think he knew that.
Then why would he do it?
Because his point is that we have a quarter of the world's population are Islamic, and the vast majority of them have nothing to do with extremism. Let's isolate the extremists, just as we wouldn't blame every Christian for the acts of some Christians, every Jew for the acts of some Jews.
Greg, is this a sufficient explanation?
Well, in a way, I mean, President Obama treated the prayer breakfast the way Kanye West treated the Grammys. It was an opportunity to say, hey, you're not all that. But he reminds me of the cliched freshman college student comes home for Thanksgiving and at dinner and wants to freak everybody out by dropping some knowledge on them that he got from his new radical professor. And it's always
women's studies class.
Yes, and it's always about the powerful versus the powerless. To him, a killer bee is just a bee that's fought imperialism from other bees.
Have you noticed how many kids leave for college as capitalists and come back at Thanksgiving as communists?
How does that happen?
Amazing. I have no idea. But, Axelrod's answer here was not bad. Why Obama doesn't give somewhere near the same answer, I don't get me. I mean, it was a understandable statement that Axelrod.
Eric, is it as simple as people are saying that President Obama is not doing a very good job this week of explaining himself, and Mercury is in retrograde? I mean, what's the explanation?
Why, and Axelrod points this out, he knew what he was doing. If he knew what he was doing, why did he, A, do it, and number two, why did they decide to write this speech for him? This is a prayer breakfast. Are you supposed to be provocative about people dying at a prayer breakfast, or are you supposed to be praying, uniting? You're laughing, but I'm trying to...
No,
I would guarantee you if they had that speech to do over again, that wouldn't be in the speech the next time.
What he did essentially, Dana, is he was poking the cage with the Christians inside.
I think we've established that it probably wasn't the best. If he wanted to have this teachable moment, maybe he could have found another place to do it than at the National Prayer Breakfast. But I guess he had the intended effect. What they should have done, though, you have an obligation when you're in the White House to make sure that what the president is going to say is true. And you can call a couple of historians and just check it out. If you look at the New York Times story that ran Saturday morning on February 26th about this speech, they quote several historians who say that actually very few historians have the view that President Obama has. Everybody has moved past that, and now the consensus view by the historians, not Republicans, the historians, is that how he described it is not how it happened. And so that was, I mean, they could have done a little bit more fact-checking. If the president wanted to include that in his speech, just they have an obligation to him to help him get it right.
It was an adolescent comment. It's like a YouTube comment on a cat video. I mean, there was no intellect in that.
Unless, one other alternate theory would be that he got so burned when Ben Carson stood up and took him apart, took Obamacare apart, that this was his moment to make good on it. His moment to get back in the spotlight saying, I got this now, don't do it to me again. And it made it worse.
But they said that the president wanted it to be provocative, but he didn't expect a full-throated, day-long debate.
What were the historians? I mean, I must be missing something here, but they weren't denying they were crusades, right?
No, but the reason for the crusades were not about going after Muslims, but about sacred territories.
I get you.
Yes. Okay.